So, you know what'd be really weird?
What?
If we did the podcast, like, alone.
Yeah, that would be weird.
Nightfall.
Hey, where's Alec?
Who?
Are you guys ready for this? Three Dudes Babbling Podcast.
Welcome back. This is your host, Joey Hooks, and this is Hooked on Podcasts. Today I will be discussing my top 10 favorite movies. Last week we talked about my favorite movies of 2017 and why I like them so much, where they kind of like what effect they had on me, why they're important, the actors, actresses in them, the directors, kind of short synopsises of them. It was a good time. So, yeah. Let's start with number 10, 500 Days of Summer. This movie stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel. This is number 10 on my list because the first time I saw this movie, I saw it after a really bad breakup. And it has one of those like gut punch endings. And if you haven't seen it yet, I really all of these movies I really highly recommend that you go see because they're just really, really good. It starts off, Tom is a hopeless romantic like yours truly, and he meets this girl Summer, and she's everything that he immediately like boom, like love at first sight. And it follows their journey non-chronologically. It's like, oh, it's day 3, now it's day 125, now it's day 62. It shows how their relationship evolved and how it kind of fell apart. And it's a really good movie. There's a lot of debate by the people that really like this movie. It's like, oh, was Summer in the right? Was Tom in the right? Just watch it and decide for yourself. Number 9 on my list is John Carpenter's The Thing. This movie was made back in the 80s, and its use of practical effects is one of the greatest. It's one of the best known uses of practical effects. Like, John Carpenter is the guy of practical effects. So this movie has Kurt Russell in it. Kurt Russell stars in it, and him and a crew of scientists are in the Arctic, and they're at the station, in the middle of the fucking glacier, and at the beginning this dog just runs up, and it's getting chased by these Norwegian guys in a helicopter, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? You're like, bad dog. And so it follows that, and then you eventually figure out that, oh, there's a thing. It's alien of some sort. It can change forms into anything. And this movie, the movie's really good. It follows Kurt Russell, and all these guys are like turning on each other, and they don't trust each other because they don't know who's the thing and who's not. And I think it's one of the best horror films of all time. That's probably for another episode. I'll probably do like top 10 horror films. This one probably ranks in the top 5. The ending is the best part too. The ending is super ambiguous, and it leaves you thinking like, So that one was good. That's a really good movie. Number 8, The Blues Brothers, one of the greatest movie soundtracks of all time. This stars John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd as the Blues Brothers. They're famous for skits in SNL back in the day when it was really good, like back in the 70s and 80s. And the Blues Brothers, Jake, who's played by John Belushi, just got out of prison, and his brother Elwood, who is played by Dan Aykroyd, picks him up, and they're trying to raise money for the orphanage they grew up in so it doesn't go out of business and get closed down. And so it follows them doing that. And they run into all these different types of characters, and it's like all the characters are played by like famous blues and R&B musicians. Like Ray Charles is in it, Aretha Franklin's in it. James Brown is in it. It's like, if you haven't seen this movie, this is one of those movies that you have to see before you die. Like, it's in my top 10 for a reason, but like, you need to see this movie before you die because it's just funny. It's super quotable. There's like so many references that like in pop culture today that go back to this movie, and it's one of those movies that's like really funny and like you couldn't make today and get away with. Like there's a chase scene that involves I think it's like 212 cop cars get crashed in the scene. It's hilarious. It's like a 10-minute car chase, and it's not like a Fast and Furious car chase. It's like funny. And if you really like that type of music, then you'll really like this movie. So yeah. Next is another movie that no one would get away with making nowadays. Is Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles is directed and written by Mel Brooks. I think it's written by Mel Brooks. I could be wrong. Mel Brooks wrote it, and when did it come out? I think it came out in the 70s. But like this is probably the most quotable movie for me until we get further down in like my top 5. Like I quote this movie on a daily basis. It makes a lot of racial humor, which is why I'm saying it wouldn't be able to be made today and like get away with it. So it starts off, and it shows these slaves. Well, I don't think they're black guys working in the West on a railroad, and they're just getting treated like shit. And the one character ends up getting elected to be sheriff of this town, and just because there's like this huge diabolical plan behind it. And he shows up in the town, and all the townsfolk are like, we don't want this guy as our sheriff, he's black. And it's so funny. Gene Wilder's in it too, and oh my god, Gene Wilder's the best part, as in any movie he's in, especially with Mel Brooks. And he kind of like mentors the new sheriff, and they just become really good friends. And like the movie's super wacky, the ending is really good. There's like a whole musical number. It's a very good movie. Next on the list is El Topo. Probably a movie that not a lot of you have heard of. Back in the day, there were these things called midnight movies, which were like these weird, zany, very weird, very like non-conformist, like just weird movies that they would show late at night. And El Topo was one of them. El Topo is directed by and stars a French-Chilean director-actor Alejandro Jodorowsky. And Jodorowsky is very interesting. He makes a lot of really weird movies, but they're really good. Actually, the cool and funny thing about this movie is John Lennon loved it. And John Lennon kind of popularized the midnight movie and helped kind of like Alejandro Jodorowsky like get like farther ahead, because El Topo came out, but El Topo's not like his most famous movie. He came out with another movie called The Holy Mountain, and that's like the more famous one. And like if it wasn't for El Topo and John Lennon liking it so much, like Holy Mountain probably wouldn't be a thing. But El Topo, the first time I saw it, I was just like, holy shit. Like, it's one of those movies where you have to watch it 2 or 3 times to fully understand it and like get the references and what they're talking about, because Jodorowsky is really good with using like mysticism and religious examples in the movie, and it's so good, and the music's really good. Like Jodorowsky does the soundtrack himself. He's the main character in it, and like the music's beautiful. I bought I collect records, as you all know. and I have a vinyl of the El Topo soundtrack, and it's like one of my prized possessions because it took like 4 months for me to get, because I had to get it shipped from like Italy, and it's just it's beautiful and I love it. So the movie's great. It's hard to explain, but it's kind of like a really weird spaghetti western. It follows this gunslinger who wants to be the best. He wants to be the best fighter in the world, or the best fighter in the land. He wants to win over the heart of his female companion, and he goes up against these 4 guys, and they all teach him a different lesson. And one of my favorite encounters is he encounters this guy who's playing like a violin or a lyre, and he's got a bunch of rabbits, and just they play music together. Like Jodorowsky's character, the gunslinger El Topo, he plays a flute in the movie, and like they play music together and they talk about life, and like it's just the scene gives me goosebumps every time. So if you want to see this movie, you need to. It's really good. And then he goes up against these guys, and shit happens, and he changes. He gets betrayed by the woman he loves, and he comes back. He's kind of like reborn as a different person, and it's seeing how he changed, and it's cool. It's different. A lot of people probably won't like it, but if you keep an open mind, you will. Going to number 5. Number 5 is The Grand Budapest Hotel, which is directed by one of my favorite directors, Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson is known for his quirky style. He's got a very unique aesthetic to his movies. Grand Budapest, Moonrise Kingdom, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Life Aquatic, Rushmore. You can see that it's an Anderson movie right away because it's so symmetrical. He shoots everything very symmetrical, and I love it. And like he has a very specific color pattern, and he uses a lot of the same actors. But out of all of his movies, Grand Budapest is my favorite. Fantastic Mr. Fox is a very close second. But I can watch Grand Budapest over and over and over. And like the way I kind of did this list was, I was like, okay, if I was on a desert island, which movie could I watch over and over and over again? And this one was one of those. Because it's very, like, it's funny, it's sad, it's dramatic, it's tense. It's like, it's all this stuff, and it's just, you really just feel a bunch of things. Like a lot of his other movies are like, oh, this is really funny, or oh, this is sad. You feel for these characters. It opens up at the hotel. Or no, it doesn't open up at the hotel. It's like you're in the future, and it's the person who wrote the book about the Grand Budapest Hotel is an old man, and he's telling his grandson the story of how he wrote the book, and then it goes in the story of how, the story of the book of the Grand Budapest Hotel, and it's a beautiful story, Voldemort, Ralph Fiennes is in it, and he plays Gustav. He's like the head guy at the hotel, and he gets his bellboys, Zero. Is it Zero? Yeah. And they bond, and they make this relationship, and like by the end it's like you're ready to own this hotel, and it's a really good movie. If you haven't seen it yet, it won a bunch of awards too for the Oscars. I think it was like nominated for like 7. I forget, or it won 7. It won a bunch. Number 4 is probably the most quotable movie that I have watched, and I can honestly and truly quote this entire movie from start to finish, including sound effects, and that is Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail. This is my favorite Monty Python movie, hands down. I know it's the most popular one, but compared to Life of Brian and Meaning of Life, I just think Holy Grail is much more quotable, and I think it's funnier. It's kind of Holy Grail. It follows the story of King Arthur and his knights and how they go on a quest for the Holy Grail. And I'd be shocked if you haven't seen this movie, or you haven't heard of it, or if you haven't even seen references to it. There's the knights who say "ni," and then the French soldiers who make fun of them. I will fart in your general direction, and your father smelt of elderberries, and your mother was a hamster. It's such a quotable movie. The Black Knight. Every time you watch it, you find another little joke hidden in there, or like a scene that you didn't really notice, like something in the background that was funny or something that was off. And even I've seen it. I watch this movie at least once a month, and I find something new every time, or something that I forgot about, and it's super funny. The guys in Monty Python are just geniuses. Graham Chapman, who plays King Arthur, he passed away, but he's probably one of the funniest ones. And then John Cleese, and John Cleese is my dude. On to number 3, which is The Princess Bride. This is like my go-to. I don't know what I want to watch movie. I have friends over. What do I want to put on? This and Blazing Saddles, but like The Princess Bride is great. It's got Carrie Yules, who plays the main guy. Why am I blanking? What's his name? Wesley. It's Wesley. Andre the Giant's in it. And this is another one. Like, I'd be shocked if you didn't see it. It's so quotable, and it's so good. It's got a young Fred Savage too. He's the kid at the beginning, and it's such a good movie. It's one of those movies that I could watch like 6 times in one day and not get sick of it. It's a beautiful love story. It's really cheesy. Like, and if you don't like cheesy movies, you're gonna hate this movie. And I get in arguments with people because I know people who don't like this movie, and they're like, it's cheesy. And I'm like, but that's the point. And it's such a good movie. You learn about the love between Wesley and Buttercup, the princess, and he goes away, and she thinks he's dead, so she gets remarried, or she's about to get remarried, and just watch this movie. It's so good. I'm probably gonna watch it after I'm done recording, because it's that movie. All right, down to the last 2. Number 2, which is a shock to a lot of my friends that I moved this up to number 2 from 1, is The Godfather. I think The Godfather is one of the greatest movies ever made. It's got Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, Robert Redford. Eventually, in the second one, Robert De Niro shows up and he plays a young Vito Corleone. And it's based off the book, written about a real mafia family, and it follows the Corleones, and specifically Michael Corleone, the youngest brother of the 3. There's Sonny, Michael, and Fredo. Sonny's the hothead. Fredo's like the little wimp, and Michael's young, but he eventually comes up to status, and he's the Godfather. And just the acting in this movie is just phenomenal. The music, I have like 3 copies of the soundtrack, like 3 different copies of the soundtrack. It's a really long movie, so if you can sit through that, awesome. It's not one of those movies where it's like, action every 2 seconds. It's like very like, oh, this happened, or oh, that's why. Like, you have to watch it at least twice to be like, oh, that's why that's why this character was mad at this character. And yeah, it's just Marlon Brando does a fantastic job. I think it's Al Pacino's best movie besides. No, this is. I'd like this 10 times better than Scarface. This is probably Al Pacino's best movie because he does so well, and everyone who knows me knows I'm obsessed with this movie. So yeah, check it out. If you got 3 hours in a day to waste watching a movie, spend it watching The Godfather. And then number 1, drum roll please, is Goodfellas. Another mob movie, because I love mob movies. I love the premise of mob movies. I love the mafia. I always thought they were like badasses. I always thought they were really cool. This has Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro. Fuck, what's his name? Why do I always forget his name? Oh, they make Ray Liotta, and Ray Liotta's the main guy, and it follows him from being a kid and his experience with the mafia and like how he grows up and becomes a big part in it, and then shit goes down, and then now he's in witness protection, and it's just like movie's got a great soundtrack. It's got a great story. The reason it beat The Godfather is that it's more entertaining. Like, it's just a funny movie. Like, The Godfather has some jokes in it, but like Goodfellas is like, I went and saw it in theaters recently because Cleveland's cool and we have great theaters that'll replay these old movies, and I was laughing my ass off. It's one of those movies that you have to see. And Goodfellas it has a great story. It's kind of like a coming of age. It's like rags to riches. He lives in a tiny apartment with his mom and dad and brothers and sisters. And he at a young, like I think like 14, 15, 16, he gets a job working with the mafia. Driving, getting cars, selling cigarettes, and he's just. He starts from there and he just builds a relationship with all these guys, and like then he's doing heists, and there's a great scene with Joe Pesci in a restaurant. It's like he's telling a story and they're like, "Oh, you're a funny guy, and he's like, "Funny how? Do I amuse you? Funny like a clown?" And he gets super mad, and like everyone's freaking out, and he just bursts into laughter because they got each, like he's just fucking with them, and it's ugh. And if you know Joe Pesci in mob movies, you kind of know what happens to him. So, spoiler alert. Well, yeah, that's my top 10 movies. Thank you for tuning in. If you want to hear more about them, or if you want to find somewhere to watch them, if you want to hear more about movies from me, email me joeyhooks98 at icloud.com. Or you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Well, have a good day.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're trying something a little different. I know you're used to three dudes babbling. Well, today you got three dudes babbling separately. It's something new, and it's a little experiment basically. Yeah, so I got some things to talk about today. Basically, just gonna be. I have some stuff that I have in my head that I want to talk about, but I will probably be going on a tangent. Because that's just what I do. So basically the first thing I got, so I was at work the other day, and this guy came in I work at GameStop, and he was basically trading in his video game system, and he was basically done with video games. I get it. That's cool. And I started talking with him. I'm like, man, you're just completely done? He's like, yeah, man, I'm done. I'm going to focus on my music career. I said, okay, that's cool. What kind of music do you play? And he called himself a solo artist. And, well, my coworker said, hey, what band are you in? And he goes, no, I'm a solo artist. And he just goes on a tangent talking about himself. He called himself the white Chris Brown. Why? Good for him for having an artist that he wants to strive to be. Um, that's I think he should definitely yeah, if he's influenced by that, good for him. But what I couldn't stand was when I was talking with him, he I mean, I don't care if you're intelligent or not, but when I was, when he was telling, what he was doing, I said good for him. He's fighting these SoundCloud rappers and shit. But when I was talking to him, he was like, yeah, I make all these beats. They're so good. I perform so good. And, I said, yeah, there's no bias, right? And he looked at me and he didn't know what the word bias meant. And when I tried to explain it to him, it wasn't clicking. All I gotta say is good luck to him. I kind of want to hear some of his lyrics and see if they're up to the standard of Chris Brown. I mean, it's just one of those things. But one of the things everyone thinks they're a fucking rapper now. Everyone thinks, and I get it. You're listening to a podcast by us. I mean, we're just three normal dudes who just I want to say three assholes who just sit around a mic and just BS. I never claimed to be this award-winning podcast or anything. I know what we are. We're just building. So, but everyone wants to be a fucking rapper now. Everyone. I just don't get it. I don't know where where it came from. Is it basically the news, or like, it might just be, everyone wants to, they see the music videos or something like that, like, oh yeah, I definitely want to be like living that lifestyle, which it's a good lifestyle. Not the most healthy, I would say, but it seems worry free. But that's just something that pisses me off. I see on Twitter, every time a tweet goes viral, I click on it, everyone has a fucking SoundCloud. Everyone. It could be, it wouldn't even have to do with rapping, but all I see, while you're clicking on this, might as well drop here's my SoundCloud link. Give it a listen. You know what? Good for you. If you're getting the listens, if you're making it big, good for you. But if you're trash and you don't have any rhythm, get out of the music industry, or at least get out of the making music. You can produce it. If you want to be a talent agent, go for it. But just don't sing it, rap it. Don't do any of that. Everyone says your dreams can become a reality. Yeah, I'm sorry to break it to you, but your dreams can't become a reality with that. If you sound like shit, you can't. It just doesn't sound good. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but you're shit. Well, now that I got that basically off my chest, kind of going to a new thing. I went well. So I mean I drive a lot, and I'm sure we all have seen idiots on the road. But this week, I mean, what really pisses me off is when people are turning and they cut the turn short. Like, it's too goddamn hard to let go of the wheel a little bit or cut it not just enough and not cut the turning lane. I've almost gotten hit by a fucking car who turns it too early, who can't wait for the fucking turn to get in their fucking lane so many times. So many. I don't understand how someone could just be lazy. Well, I understand because I've seen so many lazy people. So many lazy people. And I don't want to say, I mean, everyone's lazy. Everyone doesn't want to put in the work to do anything. They want everything handed to them. And that's just not how it is. I wish someone, when I was I never grew up handed stuff. I always had to work for it. And I think that's how it should be. But again, I've only had this perception. This was I can't see it from how others see it because I've only known one way. I've seen what it can do to people, but again, that can happen to anyone. Anyone can become lazy or basically complacent and just not want to work. I was coaching soccer. Was it last year? It was last year. I was coaching. It was a camp, and this has happened on multiple times. A kid has not wanted to participate because he wanted to go home to play video games because soccer was hard. Why do people think that they're going to be instantly good at things, that they don't need to practice at all? Like that gets me because they say they're not good. I suck at this. And I say, you just got to practice. And they're like, no, I suck. I'm always going to suck. It's not fair. And like they see me doing something and they're like, you're so good. Yeah, of course I'm better than you because I've practiced. I took the time out of my day and I practiced. I didn't sit on my ass. I mean, if you practice anything, but these kids just don't want. They want to be instant. It's our society now that just wants everything instant. Boom, 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 instant. And that's a problem. How we fix it? That's a good question. I think how we fix it is I would I talked about this previously about the participation award. Because fuck that. That's a piece of garbage. Makes me sick that people decide to give whatever it is. You know, oh, you tried. Well, you fucking sucked. Sorry. But you fucking sucked. You don't deserve that award. You don't. But I'm going to leave it on that note. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed this little change of pace to this episode. So make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We would appreciate all the feedback, some shares, anything. If you think someone would like this, tell them. I know it's kind of mediocre, but hey, like I said earlier, we're just three assholes sitting around a mic and talking. Nothing makes us special. It's just we decide to record our conversations. So yeah. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Hey guys, this is Alex segment of this podcast here. Gonna try to just come up with some interesting stuff to talk about. So, not really too sure how to take this. I haven't listened to Josh's or Joey's so far, and I'm recording it a couple days after theirs. But it's gonna be fun. We're gonna have a good time. So I think where I'm gonna start into this is, I think I'm gonna go into music, start talking about some of my favorite bands and kind of just things that have helped me get through some tough times. You know. I'll start off with Angels and Airwaves. Now, for many of you who may not know, Angels and Airwaves is Tom DeLonge, who was part of Blink-182. And after Blink split up, went ahead and started his own project. He did a couple other things, and Angels and Airwaves was his creation of a new style of music. There is a lot of thought and emotions that he goes into with his music, and it's very good to hear. It makes you kind of think about things, just the stuff he sings about, just different topics that he touches on, and just overall the aesthetic of the instruments and instrumentals and whatnot that he does. It's definitely a very good listen. I know when I was going through some shit when I was in high school, there was one song that really, really helped get me through. It was called The Flight of the Apollo. And it in the song, he just talks about how things will be all right, and just, you know, people mess up, people do things, people make mistakes, and no matter what, you can get through it, and really just you can overcome those obstacles. There's so much music out there, and it sometimes is a little rough when you try to just struggle. You struggle to dig through the garbage because the garbage is just so out there, and it's so broadcasted. You know, most of the stuff that, personally, I think most of the stuff they play on the radio is just garbage. Granted, there are some songs, some bands that play on the radio that aren't necessarily like that I would listen to. And it's hard just because the radio, they tend to just overplay music. And it's you take something good, and when you just continue to play it over and over 20 times a day, it just destroys what could have been good, and it just ruins it. I'd say, personally, some of my favorite genre of music would be like funk, I guess funk going into soft rock, Earth, Wind and Fire, Al Green, a lot of stuff like that. Like not necessarily Bee Gees, but a couple songs. It's where you really see music being what it is, and I guess most real. Just because, you know, nowadays, before all these record labels were creating and pushing out these different singers and all that just so that they could make a buck, you know, like, I don't hate Mac Miller, but he is like the definition of that, where they just took a guy off the street, auto-tuned his voice for whatever, and made him the label or the face that he is. But you know, you have all this stuff, all this music from the 80s going into 90s, you know, like the rock and roll and things similar to that, where it's so real, and people are doing what they want to do and creating music that they want to do. And it's so pure, and it's so rare nowadays. Kind of going from that, one of my favorite bands, Circa Survive, I believe they just recently kind of did the same thing. The lead singer, Anthony Green, dropped his label 3 or 4 years ago, and self-released their first album. I can't remember what the album's name is. But you know, since then he's been self-releasing his solo albums, and it's just, you know, when you have so much to do, because this Anthony Green he's such a proactive person. You know, he's in Circa Survive, he's doing solo stuff, he's touring constantly. He just released an album a couple years back with a band called Seosin. He's one of the most proactive people that you can really think of, and he does it because he loves doing it, and it's really good to see, especially when his music isn't garbage. But it's definitely very rare. Kind of going from that, I don't even really know what to talk about right now. So, kind of going from something that's really had a big impact in my life and many others. I want to kind of to go and delve into something many people seem to struggle with nowadays, especially, seeing the tragic news about Anthony Bourdain and just depression and everything like that. Everyone sometimes struggles to find things that have meaning to them, really, just something that they enjoy doing, with the constant pressures of trying to be cool or being forced, or seeming like you're being forced into doing what someone else wants you to do. So just anyone listening out there, you guys just need to you need to do what makes you happy. You need to find what your niche is and just stick with it. Do it. There's been many times that you just need to do what makes you happy. If you're doing what makes you happy, eventually you'll end up making money for it. And that's something that people don't always look at. Especially our generation. It seems like a lot of people nowadays, they just job hop until they find something that has more money. And I've come in contact with a lot of people who just, they start at one job, and then another job comes along that offers like 50 cents more. And then they leave, go to that job. And then another job offers 25 cents more. They leave and go to that job. They don't see that if you actually put in the work and you stay fairly long. I know I'm not like, I guess the most ideal person to say something like this, just because I've had my fair share. But anytime I've ever really job hopped, it's not money. It's just because not necessarily just like quality of life, but quality of work. Fortunately, the place I work right now it's a very good place, and I really enjoy what I'm doing there. Working under 2 master chefs, and I'm a very integral part of everything that goes on a daily basis. Our pastry chef left during Thanksgiving, and I basically kind of like picked that up and carried it on my shoulders. And it's a hard thing to do, especially because I don't really have too much pastry background, but it's something that I have just picked up and carried. And, when things start getting hard for some people, they definitely tend to just want to say fuck it and bail. But, it's something, when you really enjoy what you do, you sometimes just need to just suck it up and continue to just grow, because it's much like being in a relationship. Just because you'll have your fights, your bumpy roads, doesn't mean that the whole thing's fucked. You just need to continue going through it. It's something that it really frustrates me, just because there's one guy I can think of specifically that used to do this, and I didn't like him at all. It was one of my old roommates. He always said like, "Oh, I don't need to be here. This is bullshit." And then he would go ahead, move on to the next job, said, as soon as he starts, oh, this place is so much better than the last place. And the last place was bullshit, fuck that. And then all of a sudden, a couple weeks after he starts, what was so awesome is all of a sudden the same bullshit. And, granted, it's just working in, like, kitchens and chain restaurants. It's something that people don't realize. If you're a shitty person, you have a shitty attitude all the time, you're gonna gauge and be around shittier people. And a lot of people don't really think about that, because how can you think about it when you're not the best person to look at yourself and say, hey, maybe I'm being a shitty person. I should probably stop that. It's you want to surround yourself with the best people, and you can do that if you really focus and just, if someone comes along, you think they're a good person, you have to use your better judgment, your gut feeling, because I've been with people and I've hung around people that I thought were really good for me, and then they turn out to just be just assholes, and you don't want to lose your friends that truly mean something over something stupid. It definitely is something that a lot of people, it's just, with modern society, everything is just so quick and on the go, and it's always the next thing right now. And it's just like Ferris Bueller says, life is really quick. You need to just stop and take a look. It's really it. And that's straight from the 80s. 80s. But I after that kind of random babbling there, I think I'm gonna sign off, and appreciate you guys coming over and listening and stopping by for today. So hope you guys enjoyed this special episode that we had on Three Dudes. Send us a message, comment, follow us. Send us topic ideas, different things you might want to hear on the show. All right, guys. Thanks. Signing off.